and welcome to another conversation in our series. I'm Alex.
And I'm Matt, and we're excited to welcome today Catherine Jones and Anna Melbin from the Campaign for Fair Sentencing of Youth. Alex and I are particularly excited to highlight the work that Catherine and Anna are doing for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, CFSY is just a leading voice in ensuring that people who are impacted by the justice system as youth have opportunities to be successful as adults, and particularly as they transition into the workforce. And also CFSY has just created these outstanding and multifaceted partnerships with employers. Given that much of our audience is employers, I think we wanted to highlight a model that we would just absolutely love to see replicated in every company around the country. So welcome, Anna and Catherine. Thank you so much for being with us and for sharing a little bit of your work. So Anna, we'll start with you, and if you can just introduce your role and tell us a bit about CFSY and just broadly the work you're doing to impact the lives of folks impacted by the justice system.
Thanks so much, Matt. Thank you to you, and thanks, Alex. Thanks so much for having us today. We're super excited for this conversation. I'm Anna Melbin. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships at the Campaign for the Fair Sentencing of Youth. And in that role, I lead our work with our corporate partners, as you just mentioned, Matt, which we'll get into a little bit more about what those partnerships look like. And I work very, very closely with Catherine to do that work and to ensure that our network of directly impacted individuals have the resources and support and the appropriate systems to come home to so that they can prosper. So just to tell you a little bit about the CFSY, we are a national nonprofit. We are a racial justice and equity organization first and foremost. That is our focus. And we do that by leading the movement to end extreme prison sentencing for children in the United States. Just to give you a little bit of background, the United States is the only country in the world that can treat children as adults in the criminal legal system. And we're the only country that uses something called juvenile life without parole sentencing, which is exactly what it sounds like, which is putting children in prison for the rest of their lives with no possibility of parole. So we are leading the movement to abolish all of those practices. And we're the only organization in the country that focuses on this very specific issue. It's a somewhat narrow issue within the criminal legal system in the United States, but it's a wedge issue in the sense that if and when we are abolishing these laws around the country and making this kind of impact, we have the opportunity to make real change within the criminal legal system, particularly around the racial disparities. So Black children are given jail at a rate of 10 times per capita of white children, kind of regardless of the other factors in the cases. So that's just one example. About 75% of those who are serving these extreme prison sentences and jail WAP in this country are people of color, mostly Black people. So you can see where that racial justice piece comes in for that. What we do is we actually, because we are the only organization in the country sort of focusing on this issue, we work on the entire arc. So we have a legal policy team that is working both at the state and federal level to change laws to prevent additional people from ever having to serve these extreme sentences, as well as bring people home who are serving these sentences. And then we work with some of our corporate partners and others to provide pro bono legal assistance so that when people get resentencing hearings, they can come home. And then, of course, Catherine and I work on sort of the other end of the arc, which is supporting the people who are coming home. We have more than 200 individuals in our incarcerated children's advocacy network, which Catherine will tell you a little bit more about, as well as a whole network of family members across the country, hundreds and hundreds in our network. And we are working to ensure that they have what they need when they come home. One last thing I'll just say about our particular population is these are individuals who went to prison as children, some as young as 11, 12, 13 years old, and they're coming home well into adulthood. And so you can imagine the kind of resources and systems change that we're trying to do to help ensure that they have what they need.
That's great, Anna, thank you. And we have seen the impact that your work and sort of the narratives that come out of your organizations have on employers, on companies, on folks that are are trying to figure out sort of the role that they play in this.
Yeah.
And I think very inspired and motivated by the work that you're doing. And I wonder if you can just chat for a little bit, because CFSY does work closely with employers. What can employers do to sort of play a role in furthering the mission that you've laid out?
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to make it brief. I mean, the really short answer is because we work at sort of all stages of that arc that I just laid out, from from policy change to people coming home. There are many sort of different opportunities in different areas to help us. So of course, there's always philanthropy, right? We always accept money, to be blunt. So there's always financial support, but we work with the business community and employers and corporations to support our legislative advocacy, sign on publicly to support the abolishment of jail WAP and other extreme prison sentences. We work with employers and corporations to provide that pro bono legal assistance that I just talked about, putting teams together, public awareness and education, co-hosting events, and then, of course, really importantly, providing those resources and systems change work for when people are coming home. And so, of course, fair chance hiring sits squarely in there. But as well, we collect, transportation is a big issue. Food assistance is a big issue, all kinds of different concrete resources and support technology. And that's a whole nother conversation around, professional development for our network members. So I don't want to say it's limitless, but there are kind of all sorts of opportunities depending on where an employer wants to fit in.
Yeah, those sound like a ton of different pathways in order to kind of get involved. And so CFSY's Hire ICANN model provides that direct link between job seekers and employers. Can you tell us more about the experiences of ICANN members, how they're reconnecting to the workforce, including your own pathway?
Thank you, Alex. I'm Catherine Jones, the co-director of Outreach and Partnership Development at the CFSY, and also a very proud member of the Incarcerated Children's Advocacy Network. I myself was 13 when I went into prison, and I came home at the age of 30. And my story is the story of all of our ICANN members. All of them went in as children. Like Anna said, some as young as 12, 13, 14, and come home well into adulthood, late 30s, early 40s, some even older than that. So we have a lot more obstacles that we face besides the regular reentry obstacles. Like, we have no work history when we're going into these jobs to put on a resume. And then we're navigating this strange new technology-driven world. I remember coming home and seeing a smartphone and was like, what is this? And so that kind of gives you an idea of what unique challenges that our ICANN networks face. And while we're in prison, I know we spend most of our time preparing ourselves for this fresh start that we're going to have, those of us that have a day, but even those that had life sentences and only hoped and prayed that they would come home, still utilize their time inside with the hope that one day they would be home. And they come home with these skill sets thinking, like me, that we were going to come home and get a fresh start and a second chance, only to realize that the workforce was just as cruel and inhumane as the penal system was. Because the reality was that even people that said they were fair chance employers, when they see that I had a violence offense that somehow forfeited my opportunity for receiving a second chance. And when I was hired at my jobs, the four that I had before I came to the campaign, it was in entry-level positions that gave little to no room for advancement or professional development. I was told several times that I couldn't go to manager, even though I was qualified, even though I was skilled enough to, because it required a different level of background check. So I was stuck in these entry-level minimum wage positions. And so even when I Googled fair chance hiring, because that was such a buzzword, I realized very quickly that it wasn't a reality. It wasn't put into practice. It was just a buzzword used in HR circles. But there are exceptions to that. The CFSY is one. And that group is small, but it's growing, of people who are trying to do this better, who are committed to providing meaningful opportunities for employment and opportunities for us to thrive and prosper. And at the CFSY, we're eager to work with them. And so here's ICANN. Hire ICANN was developed so that we could highlight people like me, these extraordinary, amazing ICANN members, so they can get a glimpse of us outside of the black and white of the background check. You can see us as people and humanize us and realize that we are this this potential amazing superstar employee. And that was it's worked, and it's worked.
Catherine, two of the things you touched on, I just want to underscore, because I think the importance of looking at people's skills, talents, pathway holistically outside of the traditional resume, outside of the thing that's like, I worked at this company, then this company, then this company. The employers that can figure that out and figure out how to look for, you know, the skills that people develop, whether they develop them through a traditional work history or not, I think is just a really important thing, especially as employers are trying to broaden their talent pools. And then I would just also highlight the movement within companies and the challenge of moving into supervisor positions, manager positions, because I think a lot of companies approaching Fair Chance are thinking a lot about the entry level, a lot about the front end of the process and how we, you know, do recruiting and onboarding and background checks, but often still have barriers within sort of the promotion process. And so would just want to highlight that that's another area that companies can really think about is how do you make sure that employees that have been successful with you and merit those promotions aren't held back from them due to some of those policies. So thank you for sharing that. So I just want to pivot over to CFSY's specific partnerships with companies, because I think you know, a lot of the work that we do is so centered on HR and sort of the process of being more inclusive. But I think one of the things I've learned through the time I've gotten to know you both is just that those partnerships can be so much more holistic, and that you can include as a company your volunteerism, your corporate social responsibility, your sort of learning and professional development. And so, Anna, just wanted to hear a bit from you on sort of what that holistic corporate commitment to Fair Chance hiring looks like from your perspective.
I just want to say I love this question. I mean, even that sentence, what did you say? The holistic corporate commitment, like to Fair Chance hiring. Like, let's just stop there for a second. That's such a great framing. I love this question. I think the thing that I want to say first and foremost about our partnerships and the way that we approach our strategic partnerships is that we very strongly believe that one size does not fit all. We don't have a very specific sort of menu that you have to plug in here. You know, as we just talked about, and as Alex said, there are a lot of different on-ramps, there are a lot of different pathways. And so it could look like whatever it needs to look like so everybody benefits. So I think that's the important thing to start with. With that said, there are some really important elements regardless of exactly what the partnership is about. Proximity to directly impacted individuals, relationship building with our ICANN members, that is critical to everything that we do, including our partnerships. You know, I would, say that attention to internal culture is important, flexibility, patience, maybe a little bit of humor, willingness to really customize the partnership and be flexible, having buy-in from decision-making, people who have decision-making power is really, really important. And of course, the willingness to learn, not just be proximate to our ICANN members and our directly impacted network members, but to learn from them, really approach with the understanding, as Catherine has just so eloquently laid out, these are human beings with all kinds of identities and skills far beyond their record. And so those are sort of the foundational pieces, I think, that are critical to any kind of holistic relationship. To give you a real life example, our most robust partnership is with a very large corporation, international corporation. And that relationship started about 3 or 4 years ago. And it started with some proximity, some getting to know each other, relationship building, having some dinners together, and really just starting that relationship. And it has grown. When we talk about holistic, they sort of do every possible, we partner together in sort of every possible way we can. They host events for us, and I want to say at which C-suite folks show up to, which I think is an important element that, to do public awareness and increase education and visibility. They have signed on publicly for specific state legislative efforts that we've had, which has made almost all the difference for us. They do pro bono legal work. We have together created a customized employee engagement program where their employees work directly with our ICANN members. Sorry about my dog barking. This is real life on Zoom, right? Where their employees work directly with our ICANN members to do individual coaching around tech literacy. And I'm very excited to say they've also started hiring from our ICANN population, which is really exciting. So I know, yay. And so that is really the holistic approach. And I think the other thing to that is, who knows what's next with us? I mean, we meet regularly, we relationship build. It's just not prescribed. It's not predetermined. We've really allowed it to sort of evolve. And with all that said, I do want to be clear, that doesn't mean that every partner has to do everything. I think, again, the most important piece is starting from a place where everybody has something to benefit, right? That we're not taking from our corporate partners. We are giving as much as we're getting. And so we start with a conversation about what are our collective goals and how are we going to get there together? And it really starts with conversation and creativity. It starts from a place of getting together and learning about each other and being proximate, and then sort of designing it from there.
Thank you so much for just listing all of that, Anna, because it just warmed my heart. That's exactly what I talk about all day long, is culture and really having a comprehensive approach to reentry, to fair chance hiring, and really the fact that there are lots of on-ramps, but maybe if I can take that analogy a step further and say there's also inroads, or like there's lots of connectivity in between all of this, and really understanding that one thing really leads to another. Volunteerism really leads to more employee engagement, which leads to more support, and it's all really quite cyclical. So thank you for all of that.
Can I add one thing to that? I love that inroads, because I mean, the other thing with this particular relationship is that, just thinking about the employee engagement, we started with a relatively sort of formal structured design for that, and we still have some of that, but we have employees who want to come back year after year and volunteer over and over and over again because of the incredible experience that they've had. And we couldn't have predicted that.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I think that speaks to what you said earlier about really relationship building, and how a lot of all of this work is relationships between people, and understanding each other, being able to support each other, and continuing to do that. Because then you just want to continue to help and support and grow with folks. So I love that addition. Thank you so much. And taking a pivot and talking a little bit more about policies, we'd love to know more about what you're seeing on the policy front, and then what employers should be aware of in terms of advocating for local or national policy reforms. And then just one more question on top of that, specifically thinking about individuals and what they can do on the topic of fair sentencing of youth. And Catherine, this one's for you.
Thank you so much, Alex. And I'm going to try my best to thoroughly answer all three of those. Those are amazing questions. And the first one is going to have me put like my bragging jacket on for the campaign and our partners in the movement, because there's been significant momentum across the country to end extreme sentences, particularly juvenile life without parole in this country. In the last 10 years, we've gone from just 5 states banning juvenile life without parole outright to 25. In 10 years, we've gone from 5 to 25. But we're going to hold the applause, because I think the one that deserves the applause is saying, as a result of this, 840 children that were told they were worth nothing more than dying in prison are now home, and they are free. and they are free to be productive members of society, to create families, to love, and to do all the things that they thought that they would be denied of for the rest of their life. And unfortunately, we're starting to see now history sort of repeating itself as there's a resurgence of these tough on crime policies, which target our communities of color. So this is a very, very critical time that we continue our efforts, and not just continue, but double down and continue to flip these states, particularly those that are the strongest holdouts right now. So to the second question about what the business community can do, the truth is the business community, including employers, have been instrumental in the victories that we've had in the legislative body. And they've been in every single part of this process. They've signed public letters. They've contacted lawmakers directly. They've hosted educational sessions with industry leaders. They've published op-eds. They've been in every part of the process from the beginning to when the victory is won. And we need the businesses and individuals now, right now, more than ever. It's so critical. And as far as steps that we could take to do that, the first step is contact us. Me and Anna are here. The CFSY is here. We can provide information on what the priority states are right now. We can tell you what's needed. We have these amazing, thorough toolkits on how to get involved. Everything you need to get involved in reform and policy change, fair chance hiring, we've got it. I guess that should have went in like the bragging section too. And one more thing though, if an employer is interested in fair chance hiring, I think it's very important to note that fair chance hiring and reform go hand in hand. If the laws, changing the laws brings the people home, which increases the labor supply and the diversity of the talent pool, one hand washes the other. So both of them are needed to really be a fair chance employer. You have to be involved in reform.
It's such a great point. And I always want to say on the advocacy front, because I know a lot of employers are involved in, in large sort of clean slate legislation and really important things at the state and the federal level. I also just think employers can play a really big role with like individuals on probation, like someone may have a really challenging like reporting structure that an employer can call and say, hey, can you make this a bit more flexible? And I sometimes think the employer voice goes a lot further than everybody thinks, particularly with some of these individual cases. So it's just great to highlight some of that connectivity. All right, so we're going to let you go, but we want to give you the last word on just, if you're talking to a new employer, just getting started in fair chance, thinking about this, any just word of advice that you'd share with them.
So I've been thinking about this a lot recently. There's a lot of momentum right now, as we've already talked about, in particular because of the labor shortage. So we're seeing a lot of employers at least talking about fair chance, second chance hiring, wanting to start exploring. And well, my list of advice could be very long, but I'm going to keep it really simple. And that is, I would say, don't let perfection be the enemy of progress. I think that sometimes we overcomplicate the idea of fair chance hiring. Again, it's incredibly important to pay attention to internal culture and policies and getting buy-in and all those other pieces. But I think sometimes let's just say, if anybody on this call, anybody listening to this call has ever hired anyone and or supervised anyone, it doesn't always go right. Right? We always, every now and then, you overlook something, you see a red flag that you decide not to pay attention to, you make a bad judgment call. It's happened to all of us. Not everybody works out. And I think it's important to remember that that's true for everybody, right? And so you may hire somebody who has a record, they may not work out. It's not going to be because of their record. Right? It's going to be because they're a human being, and not everybody is a great fit for every single job out there. And for those of us that have gone through that process and made a mistake and sort of wish we'd, done something differently, we don't stop hiring. We don't decide, oh, well, they're clearly the whole process doesn't work. I'm never going to do that again. Right? And so I don't know, this may be a little controversial for some people out there, but I think we need to just remember that people who have criminal records are human beings. And to your point earlier, Matt, like look beyond the sort of traditional, what looks on paper, certainly look beyond the background check and give it a try. You know, certainly do it intentionally, put some things in place that you need to put in place, you know, if there are risk factors, et cetera, if there are policies you need to pay attention to. But I think try it. I think that's the biggest piece of advice that I can, and I don't, you know, I don't think that I think that employers will benefit. We know that they do when they try it. A lot of those risks, a lot of those worries that we have often do not play out. And again, if the employee doesn't work out, it's not going to be because of their record. And so I guess I would just say the second sort of part of that advice is reach out and establish relationships with organizations like the CFSY, you know, trusted organizations who work and partner directly with directly impacted individuals and networks every day. Get to know them, you know, just like, again, you would with any other position. Most of us reach out to our networks to get referrals for people, you know, do you know anybody? I have this job open. Do the same in the sort of reentry space, right? We reach out, you know, and better yet, with an organization that is also a fair chance employer. So the CFSY, we have about 27 staff. About 12, I want to say maybe 13 are directly impacted, including 8 who are ICANN members, like, you know, including Catherine, who are formerly incarcerated children. And I think that that's really important. So again, just like you would sort of any other process, establish trusted networks, get referrals, get to know people, and give it a try and see how it goes.
Such great advice, honestly. And I love just the simple, like, try it. I think, you know, there are folks that might be concerned about all of the things to know before starting. But I think to your point, like, you're going to learn and grow as an organization with fair chance hiring, but really trying to remember that there are tons of resources out there, as well as specific organizations that have resources to support you during that process. And remembering that one size does not fit all. And it's really about kind of context and internal culture and really figuring out how do we support folks best. I just want to say thank you so much, both to Anna and Catherine, for spending this time with us and having this wonderful conversation and really giving our listeners some facts about fair sentencing for youth. And the last thing that I just want to say before I let us go is just remembering employers that your voice does go far, especially as it relates to policy and reform.